Out this afternoon and our sessions on planet and purpose. And first off, to get us into the mood and really make this H0, of course, we start with the generation that is the Rosenberg students with the Rosenberg sprints.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Mr. Bree. First, my name is Mateos. I am at grade 11, and I'm very pleased to introduce a great friend and an esteemed colleague, Shiv, presenting his solution to close the last mile energy gap.
Thank you. I'm Shiv. I'm in grade 12, and I'd like to start with a simple fact. 675 million people have no electricity, and the grid is not coming. Nothing is coming to save them. Extending medium voltage lines, that's the normal grid that one has, costs $8,500 per kilometer. For remote villages, that is equivalent to $23,000 per kilometer. That is impossible and not viable. Instead, a solar microgrid would deploy complete solar microgrids in standard 20-foot shipping containers. One unit would provide 500 kilowatt batteries, 100 kilowatt hybrid inverter, and 75 kilowatt power solar capacity. One could ship it on a truck, ship, or fly it on a plane. Within 48 hours, you'd be powering an entire village. That's hundreds of people who wouldn't have had electricity otherwise. The system would be engineered, it already is in fact, all these are readily available materials, for 20-year plus lifespan, and all you need is a simple engineer who has minimal research and minimal knowledge training on the subject. All you need to do is screw in a few things and plug in a few wires. The economics are very simple. It would cost $142,000 for 20 years worth of electricity, and I find that a very good deal. $285 per kilowatt hour and a blended tariff of 28 cents per kilowatt hour. That's half the cost of diesel generation, the other alternative. Diesel generators are expensive and produce vast amounts of greenhouse gases. What does this do? It pays back the investor in 4.7 years at a maximum. It produces 18% return and over 15 years. So I have one question. Who wants to fund the first 10 projects? Who wants to fund the first 10 projects? And who wants to save hundreds of people's lives? Thank you.
Hello, my name is William Hubble. I'm a grade 10 student at Institut of the Rosenberg. And for our second student solution sprint today, I'll be introducing Sai, Alexei, and Dea.
Hello, I am Dea Helen, and I am grade 12. And I want to talk about the future that delivers us efficient, environmentally sustainable service, combining humanoid robots for customer engagement with autonomous electric transport for rapid, reliable delivery. Think large revenue and strategic partnership, from healthcare facilities to rental facilities. Key resources include robotics hardware, AI software, electric vehicle fleet, charging infrastructure, maintenance facilities, and skilled technical workforce. All of this for the innovation opportunity of creating unprecedented business possibilities, clean technologies that benefit environment, economy, and society simultaneously.
So, hello everyone. My name is Alexei. I'm 9th grader from Institut of the Rosenberg, and my focus is on physics and technology to protect human lives while also improving economy results. So my idea was, in dangerous jobs like mining, in extremely very cold weather such as Russia, robots and driverless vehicles can actually replace humans easily. So this can reduce deaths. It can actually be more efficient, and it can be actually long-term profitable in economy. So then, the most important thing, I think, technology should be not alone, and it should be trustful in two generations, the older generation and younger generation. Younger generation must always accept rules and responsibility between older generation. Thank you.
Hello everybody, my name is Sai. I'm a grade 11 student at Rosenberg, and here's my spin on how we should take robots and make use of them. So this new generation will create a digital divide between people who know how to use robots and people who don't. So here's how I think we can make use of the emerging markets that come with the new emerging technology. I'm thinking we create a library of data for machine learning. Now, what do I mean by this? AI will learn by itself, and then it will send the data that it learns to a library where people can pay to access it and use it for their own robot models. And I think that this is a great idea because it creates revenue, it's profitable, and yeah, it's something that anybody can understand. So thank you for listening to me. And before I go, I want to just give you one question so that you can think about. What responsibilities should Frontier Technology Center and who is accountable? Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I hope you all had a good lunch. Salmon was good? Good salmon? Hello, hello. So now we're gonna do the afternoon session. I would like to call up some people. Dr. Carol. Here. Atta. Hello. Please have a seat.
Brian, can you introduce the name and title where they're from?
Yes. So Atta is actually the founder of Climate Flux. Alexander from MIT.
Oh, Carol. It's Carol. Dr. Carol. That's Carol.
Oh, sorry, Carol.
Can you introduce where Carol's from?
Executive Director, Smithsonian Science. Oh, Oliver, MIT. Please have a seat. Emma, MIT. Please have a seat. Sophia Grayton. Lighton Grayton. Grade 12, sorry. On the paper. Yes, please. And with me, my co-moderator Allegra and myself Ryan, grade 11. Are we ready to begin? So my first question is for Carol. What is one evidence-based approach that reliably changes behavior and systems, not just attitudes, in climate action?
So one evidence-based approach is something I'll selfishly talk about from the Smithsonian Institution. And it's called the Smithsonian Science for Global Goals Project. And the idea of the Smithsonian Science for Global Goals Project is to change the way secondary education approaches the teaching of science, so that it's not just about the teaching of scientific content. So think about your physics class or your chemistry class, but it's a transdisciplinary approach to teaching that's based on real-world problems and real-world phenomena that are contextualized to youth and where they live. And so the idea is that can we help develop students' scientific literacy, but simultaneously develop their sustainability mindsets? And what I mean by a sustainability mindset is that not only are you learning the scientific content, that's important, or the skills of scientific investigation, that's critical, but you're also learning about the importance of ethics and making certain that what you're doing is equitable and serving all students, so kind of as an equity mindset. It's also important for you to develop a mindset that allows you to think about other people's perspective. The third is this idea of connectedness, that there's an interrelationship between what you do locally, what you do regionally, and what happens globally. And this idea of building students' scientific mindsets or scientific literacy at the same time that you're building sustainability literacy, if you will, or sustainability mindsets, is a new way of thinking about approaching education. And I think that's innovative. It's evidence-based now. And we know that it makes a difference for secondary students because we've done research on this, where students say it is more meaningful now. Like, for example, how many of you have heard of the acronym STEM? right? Science, technology, engineering, math, when it's meaningful to youth in communities and they're using STEM to solve local problems and they're thinking about it, how it makes a more sustainable future, that's pretty innovative.
Okay, thank you. Very nice. Our next question is for Atta, and what problem is climate flux tackling, and what's the most innovative part of your approach? Is it the tech, the data, the business model, or your partnerships?
Yeah, when I look back to almost 6 years ago when we started Climate Flux, we didn't really go the traditional path of starting a startup. And I'm not saying that's not right path, but for us, we started with one simple question, that why don't we have data or information to quantify how people feel when they're outdoors, when they're outside, and how we can use this data to make actionable decisions in cities, and also give them platforms that they can inform on their daily based life. And everything started with that question, and we moved on. Based on that, we developed some technology actually to sense the environment, how people feel in that environment. And then further on the path, now, for example, we developed some platforms. It's called Cool Street. You can look it up. And basically, on every day, you can plan your walk or bike or cycling based on not the fastest route, based on the most greenest route or the most comfortable route based on the city you are. So we are planning to expand this for other cities, but the idea was that this data exists, it's important for cities, but how we can give this data to people, because they're surrounded by the environment and it can be helpful for them. So going back to your question, so we kind of touched on all of those, like data, policy, platforms, communities. And I would say when you start an idea, it's good to just try it. So it's good to, you can follow a certain process of founding a startup or a company, but I think it's good to just try it. And talking about productive failure, you can try, you can fail, you can learn. And based on that, I think most of the experience in this domain is happening through the path, which is, in this time, the climate is a critical topic. But I'm glad there's still conversations happening, and I think we need to keep this conversation going.
Agreed.
Yes.
Thank you. My next question is for Alexander. In circular design, what is the most promising level right now? Material reuse, modularity, embodied carbon accounting, or something else? And why?
Thank you. This is a great question. I think that, of course, it's a combination of all these approaches, without any doubt. When it comes to climate action and climate impact, and I would say even climate education, you kind of have to go with the kitchen sink, as people say, because it's somewhat of a desperate situation, actually, right? And we need to be trying all these approaches at once. But from my own work, what I have found to be most impactful is thinking about the material itself and working on materials that are inherently circular. So much of my research revolves around earthen construction, which, many people think, would I really want to live in a house made out of soil? It seems too simple, or like you can't make a chalet with those materials. But the reality is you actually can. It's just that our technological society has not invested as much energy in those particular materials, perhaps because we haven't had such a need to. We're just using concrete. Maybe it's a little easier to deal with now. You can build faster and with less precise engineering. But I think something we know about climate impact is that it's basically a result of a lack of care in our processes as human beings. So I think if we start to think at the material scale about every material we choose to bring into a human-made system, like a building, we can easily mitigate climate impact in our daily lives, right? So it's nice to think, we'll design a building that can be disassembled in 50 years and turned into a new building, but we truly have no idea what will happen in 50 years. And so I think the key is to start with materials now, which are inherently low carbon, and also inherently flexible. You know, like this house is a good example. Timber is a great renewable resource. This is a modular timber building. Many of its parts could be disassembled and used for something else. So I think I see some combination of material and intentional design.
Thank you.
Yeah, we at Rosenberg, we try to do that. My next question is for Oliver. What circular projects most often break down in practice, and how do you solve it?
Yeah, that's also a good question, and I think it ties into kind of what Sandy was talking about. I think that at least in the architectural and engineering dialogue, there is often this weird relationship between structure and aesthetics, and that those two are in opposition of one another often, where aesthetics are dictating the shape and how we actually occupy a space, whereas the structure is a secondary thought. And when those two things are opposing, it means that it's very difficult to integrate them as one sort of universal language for architecture and design. And I think that even if you look up right in the chalet, the beams have quite a big impact on the space that we're in now. And some of them are fake, at least, which is showcasing, again, that there is like a weird relationship between somebody making a design choice about this chalet, saying that we need all of these beams, when in reality, we really only need the 4 that are over the roof. So I think the best way to fix that is actually have either more dialogue between structural engineers and architects, or get them engaged more in the process, or we take a different sort of education standpoint where architects maybe are less focused on Beaux-Arts or have that education, but also have an engineering background and can rationalize in an intelligent way.
My next question is for Emma. What's one youth-led or partner-led circular solution you've seen that's genuinely replicable, or what makes it work?
Thank you for that question. What I find very inspiring about the youth is that they have the power to define culture, and culture creates movements which have global impact. One way that I have observed and admire is in fashion. Youth that I talk nowadays are totally moving away from buying new. It's just like the cool thing to go to the thrift store, find something, you have a sense of accomplishment, whether it's something used, something vintage, there's a story, and it relates to a place where they found it. And you even see this influencing higher-end fashion houses like Miu Miu and Prada, who are coming up with their upcycle brands. And to me, that's a direct link to kind of what's happening on the street. And I find this such a kind of inspiring example. And I hope that this zeitgeist can influence neighboring industries like design and hopefully architecture. That's a bit of a different scale, but it's a good challenge.
Thank you.
Our next question is actually for one of our students. Maybe you'd like to sit down there just so the camera can see you better. Okay, so in your work with climate flux, what is the next generation doing differently? And what's the approach and what makes it more efficient than like the usual business casual?
Thank you so much. So first of all, I would like to share this question with Atta, if you're not against that, because as kind of the primary face of climate flux, I think this would be interesting for you to answer. But I think that the genuine answer to that would be the convenience of using the climate backpack that was produced by Climate Flux, because it combines kind of the convenience of just wearing it when you're going along kind of a usual route with the convenience of having 10 different measures, 10 different systems, 10 different like technologies in it that are all measuring like different things all at once. So by the end of something as simple as just a basic walk around the park, you basically have a huge set of data without any kind of personal work whatsoever, and you can use it in any way you like. Do you have anything to add?
One point behind the technology side of what we're talking about. I think one piece that most of the time is missing in climate, at least conversation, is the community itself. Like, how do we bring the community into the table and how we can share and learn from them? And that technology kind of enabled that, because the way it works that we normally do workshops with the neighborhood or with the community centers, and the people come, we walk together, we collect the data, we look at the data, they can see actually what they felt and what they observed, and then that becomes the base for conversation with the policymakers and the cities to actually dig more detail in the needs of the community itself, other than just sitting behind a computer and developing something that might be useful but might not. It's a very quick feedback loop that it's very valuable, I think, in this kind of process when you're doing actual applicable work for people.
Thank you. My next question is for another student, Laura. In your work with urban refuge, what is the next generation doing differently, and what problem are you solving? What is your method, and how would you scale it?
I actually started my work with urban refuge like 2 years ago. I remember when MIT came over to Rosenberg, and we were starting on like the basic idea of refugee housing. And when we went to New York this year, it kind of expanded to like genuine housing. And I think it's a big deal because at the end of the day, for every single person, having a home or architecture, somewhere to put a roof over your head is very important. And the way that we can make it more sustainable would, in the long run, be very beneficial. When I was in New York, I was working with Emma and her design structure. And I thought it was really interesting, apart from the fact that it's great for the environment and like helping this ecosystem, that behind her piece, there's also a story and there's art to it, and it makes it more interesting, and there's a lot more personality inside the piece. And I think our generation, we're rethinking how we can make the most like basic necessities in the long run and the short run much more environmentally friendly and accessible to everyone.
Thank you.
We have time for a second round. Okay, cool. Then we're gonna redo the round. Carol, how can we communicate climate solutions in?
You can also, and we might have some questions from the audience, so you can also go in the round, you can also open the round.
Okay, let's open the round. Does the audience have any questions whatsoever to any of our visionaries?
Thank you so much. I just wanted to ask, how can we make like living more sustainable, like architectural sustainable, when a lot of people, have certain design wants and needs that might require, less sustainable architecture and more, more materials for these different types of architecture designs that people really like.
Is this a specific question to someone or in general?
I could try to speak to it for a second. So I think this is a really good question because, the range of architecture is only matched by the range of human experience, right? People live in every imaginable size building with, lacking electricity or water or having 20 rooms, right? And kind of as we were discussing, there are amazing opportunities in any context to have a climate impact. But I do think, you had brought up, is carbon accounting important? I think that's actually where it's important to kind of zoom out and think about things because we may perceive, there's all of this waste, people are building these fancy buildings. And that's true, that is an impact. But the reality is most of the climate impact of the next 50 years will be a product of what's called rapid urbanization. So all over the world, more and more and more people are moving into cities. And we have to build lots and lots of housing and infrastructure for all of those people very quickly. And so I would actually say, for the most part, it's the design that you barely see that actually is amounting to the most carbon. But this is where it becomes problematic. If the high design, fancy skyscraper or fancy hotel is showcasing super inefficient, unsustainable design, then it ends up everywhere in the city, right? And so I think what people have to understand is that, okay, while maybe making their skyscraper, out of a more sustainable material, like maybe mass timber instead of concrete, maybe it costs more money, maybe even that one building actually isn't more sustainable, but you're making a point and you're creating even policy that can carry through into what will quickly become this sort of rapid urbanizing trend where we won't really have very much time to make adjustments. So I think that's kind of the balance. But anyone else have thoughts about this?
Shortly. Yeah, I agree. I think it's a great question. And I think in the time we live, we have most of the technologies to build. But I think where we are a little stuck is the scalability. How we can scale this to broader impact. Yeah, building one beautiful house from low carbon material is great. But for example, the work we are doing in Forma, like at least using concrete, but at least making sure that you're using it efficiently. And you don't need to pour huge amount of concrete. You don't know if you need it. Maybe structurally it's needed, but since everyone does it, then we do it the same. So I think we need to move a little bit to more scalable solutions to have at least to see the impact that we are willing to see in the future.
Maybe if I can add to that, I think that there's also aesthetics are trends, right? I think that right now it's important to understand that form is a direct impact of the amount of carbon that you use. So if you're choosing a flexural system, like a beam, you are probably going to use more carbon than you would if you use a dome or an arch or a funicular, is what we call it. And that's just an aesthetic choice. So I think that we probably have to change the language about aesthetic trends that we like now to ones that are more structurally efficient and ones that are more materially efficient. And then also think about fabricability, because I think that, as Sandy was touching on, all of these buildings that need to be built are choosing the fastest way to build them. So if we can come up with more scalable options for how to build buildings, then we can probably use less material and still be meeting aesthetic goals.
I have one more pragmatic thing to add, which is it will be driven by code and by policy, which already exists. And as designers, you have to reach them. And in certain projects where you have investors, they will only get a return if those are met. So actually, the people financing the projects can start to put a lot of pressure on meeting those goals. So similar to the kind of culture and the buildability is that it has to kind of be written down in the policy and kind of the future of how we build our buildings.
Could I add one more thing? Because this is such an important question. So first of all, I love the question. And what's interesting to me as an educator, a science educator in particular, is that these are the types of questions students have. And so our pedagogical belief is that because you have these kinds of questions, which are excellent, and we've heard them over the past 2 days, we believe that you should be asking these questions in your classroom, which I know in Rosenberg you are, and learning about it, not in a more traditional way, but imagine a course that's just on sustainable communities, where you actually did an investigation of what types of architecture are used in your community, what types of materials are being used in your community, how do you dispose of waste in your community, what circular practices are used in those materials, what technologies are being added to that system, and do those technologies contribute to, say, emissions, carbon emissions, or reduce them? And so for me, and this is part of the Smithsonian Science for Global Goals project, this belief that students, a course in high school should be called Sustainable Communities, in which students are tackling those issues and then doing something about it in their local community.
That is a very, very beautiful idea. When you just mentioned it, I feel like it would actually have a lot of potential for such a course to be hosted in Rosenberg, and maybe for students to be able to commit to research, first of all over St. Gallen, and second of all, just with the kind of structures and materials that we already have in school, coming back to, once again, urban refuge, the idea that was presented many times today and yesterday. yeah, it would be very, very useful for students to kind of see this for themselves and to be able to collect this data, not only from the more sustainable solutions that we have, not only from the research we already have with this, but also in comparison with the normal kind of like use structures within the city, within Switzerland.
Yes.
Thank you so much. That was fantastic. And I think we all learned a lot from this conversation. As you just mentioned, we might even have a new talent and enrichment course going soon. Thank you so much. And we hope to see you in the next panel, right? Perfect. Thank you.
All right, so now's the time to